I'm Shay Russell from mining.com.au, and joining me today is Bruce Lane, the CEO for GTI Energy. Bruce, it's great to have you back on. How are you?
I'm great, thanks, Shay. It's great to be back talking with you again.
I'm thrilled to have you on because there are signs of life in the uranium market and some big things happening in the US. Let's talk about spot price movement first. We've got a spot price up above $70 per pound for the first time in a while. What do you think's driving this?
Oh, look, there's a number of factors, but fundamentally it's the supply-demand situation. We think that the uranium supply shortage in the world is actually starting to bite. I think utilities are moving back towards contracting. There's been some RFPs and requests for price or requests for quotes in the market, both in the term market and in the spot market. So, we can see a movement back towards contracting, and that's typical for this time of the year as we lead up to the summer holidays in Europe.
Now, the Sprott Physical Uranium Trust, often referred to as SPUT, recently made some bold moves and silenced concerns around selling. Can you tell me what they were and why this is actually quite a bullish signal for uranium going forward?
Yeah, it removes a bit of an overhang because there was a view in some quarters that SPUT or Sprott would start to need to sell physical uranium in order to fund their ongoing costs of running the fund, so the storage of physical uranium and the administration costs. And it was a bit talked about for a few weeks or even months. And so what SPUT have done to remove that is to go out and do a private placement for $25 million, and they've introduced new capital to fund their activities rather than needing to sell uranium. They came out with a very clear statement that they won't be selling any uranium or lending it to anyone or anything exotic. So it's really helped take that off the table, and I think that's been supportive of the uranium price as well.
Another thing that's adding weight to the uranium bull case right now, and I know you're very plugged in with what's happening within the new US administration. I believe Trump is making certain moves. There's maybe an executive order coming through. Tell me, what have you heard?
Yeah, there's been a rumor circulating on actually some publishing of a draft executive order around quadrupling nuclear power in the US. So we haven't seen the executive order officially yet, but it's bubbling around that's going to hit the airwaves soon. There's a couple of important components of that. One is the accelerating of development of nuclear power plants. And one of the things that's been mentioned is the possibility of building gigawatt-scale reactors on Department of Defense sites, which are outside the purview of the NRC, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, which has been responsible for slowing down permitting and activity in the nuclear power sector. So look, if it's 4 times the amount of nuclear power that the US has at the moment, they currently consume 50 million pounds a year of uranium or thereabouts. That suggests that they would need, around 200 at a run rate. Now, remembering that every one of those new reactors that comes on needs 500,000 pounds a year to run, but it needs 1.5 million pounds just to get started at the first fuel load. So we're talking about really, really significant quantities of uranium. If they to get even close, even if they got halfway to that number, we'd be talking about, at least 100 million pounds against the current US production rate of 1 million pounds or less than 1 million pounds a year. So there's a really, really strong case for the uranium miners looking out into the future.
I want to touch on something you just mentioned in your answer there, and that is there's been a slowing down of permitting to date, but you're seeing signs that the permitting process is going to speed up. What is that?
Yeah, look, there is another executive order from the White House around permitting, accelerating permitting for critical minerals, including uranium. And look, what we're seeing now is that the Bureau of Land Management certainly is looking for projects that need to be accelerated. There's 2 lists that have been created by the Permitting Council. Now, the Permitting Council is trying to create transparency around projects so that all of the agencies involved at the federal government level, of which there are, a dozen or so, get visibility of these projects and do everything they can to help accelerate them. So there's 2 lists, there's the Fast 41 list and the Transparency list. So both of those lists are effectively open, and some projects have already gotten onto those lists, And one, for example, the Velvet Wood mine in Utah, which is owned by Energy, has been selected for accelerated permitting, and that's been in the news recently. So we're seeing a real determination to identify the projects and then help them get through that process as quickly as possible. There's still a bit of water to go under the bridge with how all the states fall in line and whether the state governors provide an executive order, whether they put the resources in place to handle all that permitting, and how that cuts across all of the other agencies. There's still a bit of work to do, but the intention is very clear. The leadership is there, and it's going to have an impact on projects like ours going forward. We can see that very clearly.
Now, earlier in the year, AI data centers were said to be behind the push for nuclear, and then all of that hullabaloo disappeared. But I believe Google has recently just signed a contract reigniting hopes that nuclear energy will power data centers going forward. Bruce, have you got any additional details to this?
No, look, they signed a deal with Elemental for 1.8 gigawatts across 3 reactors. So these aren't small modular reactors. These are larger reactors, 600 megawatts each. And that's really what we want to see is the data center guys not just contract with utilities, but also get behind the meter for projects where that energy from those power plants will go directly into, the data centers. And look, that narrative has never gone away. I think it got nipped in the bud by DeepSeek, and I think there was a view that was going to slow down data center building, but it hasn't. And if you look across the board at all of the Magnificent Seven, they are all getting involved in nuclear power, whether it's SMRs or larger reactor deals, either behind the meter or in conjunction with utilities. And so President Trump, there was another meeting at the White House with Jensen Huang was there, and they were talking about the amount of amount of energy that's going to be required for these data centers, and it is extremely significant. Should not be underestimated. That's why the national energy emergency was put in place in January of this year. So look, I think that narrative is alive and well. It's a reality. It's happening, and we'll see more and more of it as we go forward.
And finally, Bruce, just to bring today's conversation home, I know the Herma project over in Wyoming is currently having a scoping study undertaken. How's this progress?
Yeah, look, progress is great. We've done all the work required for the inputs to the study. We're just, I guess, putting the finishing touches on the report. So I'm hoping it'll be out in the next few weeks, and that it'll show a positive case both for a central processing plant, but also for a satellite operation if that opportunity arose. So, look forward to that. Look forward to getting it out pretty soon.
Listen, Bruce, thank you so much for the update. It was great to speak with you.
Yeah, good to see you again, Shay. We'll talk again soon, hopefully.